The early morning sun, golden and indifferent, bathed our neighborhood in its light, casting long shadows from the neat rows of houses. My lawn, the canvas of my small kingdom, stretched out in a rich, green carpet. I had always taken pride in its vibrant health, a living testament to the peaceful diligence I poured into its care. But peace is a fragile thing. Karen lived 3 houses down. Her lawn was an unruly mix of brown patches and desperate green shoots, a battlefield of neglect and overzealous gardening. She was known in our cul-de-sac for wielding the power of the HOA like a sword, issuing fines with the enthusiasm of a vigilante. It began with the smallest of slights. A terse note slipped under my door, typed in the kind of font that screamed passive aggression. She had spotted dandelions too, to be exact, brazenly thriving at the edge of my property. Her accusation, dripping with condescension, was that I was lowering the neighborhood's standards. I could have rolled my eyes and let the matter slide, but Karen was relentless each morning. As I savored the quiet serenity of my garden, her presence would punctuate the air with the sharpness of an unwelcome thorn. Her scrutinizing gaze lingered like a storm cloud, ready to unleash another downpour of pettiness. Instead of retaliating, I chose a response she would find most confounding tranquility. There was a certain power in not rising to the bait, so I plucked the offending dandelions, tenderly removing their roots, and went on with my day, my lawn's emerald expanse undiminished. Time passed, as it always does, and Karen's vigilance increased. She would stalk past my house during her daily patrols, clipboard in hand. Eyes narrowed. Her dissatisfaction seemed to grow with each passing week, and with it, a peculiar tension settled over the neighborhood, like the charged air before a summer storm. One evening, returning from work, I found a small pile of pebbles on my doorstep. They were arranged in a neat little pyramid, an oddly childish gesture, yet menacing in its precision. It was as if she had marked my house for some inscrutable form of retribution. I chuckled at the absurdity, a quiet laugh escaping my lips as I swept the stones aside. There is an irony in patience, in remaining unyieldingly serene in the face of someone else's tempest. Karen's antics were like ripples in a pond, briefly disturbing the surface before dissipating into nothingness. But beneath the facade of her calculated malice, I sensed a growing desperation. Her own lawn, the source of her discontent, was a mottled patchwork of failure. The irony was not lost on me. Her attempts to enforce a sterile perfection in the world around her only mirrored the chaos she couldn't control within her own yard. As the days wore on, her frustration became almost palpable, a tangible force that seemed to seep into the very ground beneath our feet. One could almost sense the inevitable unraveling, the quiet anticipation of a storm yet to break. In the quiet moments, when the world was still and my garden thrived under the watchful care of the sun, I would think of Karen. There was a certain inevitability to her actions, a path charted by her own insecurities. And so, the stage was set. Her next move was inevitable, like the final act in a play where the villain unwittingly ensnares themselves in their own web. The air was heavy with expectation, the calm before the inevitable chaos. A strange sense of calm washed over me as I stood in my front yard, surveying the aftermath of Karen's latest attempt at sabotage. The grass, once lush and green, bore a few conspicuous patches of yellow, stubbornly defying the resilience I cultivated. The telltale scent of bleach lingered, a ghostly reminder of her nocturnal visit, but I knew this was far from over. Karen was not one to retreat. She was regrouping, sharpening her claws. The sun barely peeked over the horizon when the new set of HOA guidelines appeared neatly rolled in my mailbox. I uncurled the paper with a mix of curiosity and dread. The rules were absurd. A draconian list of demands seemingly designed with me in mind. Lawn height dictated to the quarter-inch. Paint colors narrowed to a stifling palette of beige and gray. An entire section dedicated to trash can placement. A veiled attack on the one-time mine had lingered at the curb a minute past pickup. I could almost see her triumphantly typing each word. Citations followed swiftly for minor infractions I'd never even considered violations. A stray dandelion here, a leaf daring to descend before the appointed season, all meticulously documented with time-stamped photos. Evidence of her relentless vigilance. Her obsession with my downfall was almost impressive. As the weeks rolled on, the neighborhood buzzed with murmurs, a symphony of whispers conducted by Karen. She played the part of the concerned citizen, casting veiled aspersions on my character, questioning my commitment to community aesthetics. Her thinly veiled disdain dripped like venom into every conversation, carried by the breeze into the ears of the unsuspecting. Her words were weeds, insidious and pervasive. I noticed the sidelong glances from neighbors who once waved with genuine warmth, their smiles now tight-lipped, eyes flickering with uncertainty, caught between the narrative Karen spun and the reality they had known. My calm exterior hid a simmering resolve. I let the roots of patience and tenacity dig deeper. It was during one of her routine inspections that the universe decided to intervene. Karen, clipboard in hand, strolled through the neighborhood, her gaze critical. Ever watchful, she lingered at the edge of her own lawn, perhaps to critique its perfection one last time. But fate had a sense of humor that day, a late summer rainstorm, sudden and torrential, unleashed without warning. I watched from my window, the rain soaking into the earth, carrying with it the remnants of her own chemical warfare. The bleach she had intended for my ruin had quietly seeped into her soil, her grass now betraying her with its own sickly hue, a poetic justice of nature's making. For a moment, I contemplated stepping outside, offering consolation or perhaps a knowing remark, but silence, I decided, was the more powerful retort. I turned back to my own garden, nurturing its recovery with quiet determination. The rain washed away more than just the bleach. It cleansed the air of tension, leaving behind a fresh promise of renewal. In the aftermath, the neighborhood seemed to exhale, a collective sigh of relief as the whispers dwindled, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the songs of birds. Karen, her power diminished, retreated into her house, her fortress now tinged with the irony of her own making. And me, I carried on. My lawn, a testament to resilience, a quiet reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply to endure and thrive. The sun rose defiantly over the neighborhood, casting its warm light on the remnants of last night's storm. My lawn, still damp with dew, shimmered like a carpet of emeralds, a stark contrast to the browned patches where Karen's bleach had left its mark. Her act of sabotage was clumsy, like a toddler's attempt at crafting a masterpiece with a sledgehammer, but I had learned long ago that revenge is a dish best served cold, with a side of irony. I found myself wandering through the garden in the early hours, camera in hand, documenting the damage. Each photograph captured not just the physical scars on the grass, but also the absurdity of it all, her futile attempts at supremacy, a tragic comedy unfolding in perfect silence. I knew these images wouldn't just serve as evidence, they would tell the story she was so desperately trying to script herself out of. The idea of direct confrontation felt like a tired cliché, the kind of melodrama she thrived on. Instead, I sought something more subtle, more fitting of the quiet resilience the world often overlooked. So, I turned to the earth itself, the silent witness to her folly. A plan began to form in the recesses of my mind, intricate yet simple, like a watch with delicate gears moving in perfect harmony. There was a certain poetry in letting nature take its course. I spent the day tending to my lawn with care, nurturing it back to health, coaxing it to forgive and forget. The damage was superficial. After all, grass has a way of bouncing back, resilient as hope. As I worked, I thought of the other lawns in our neighborhood, each with its secrets and stories, each a testament to the lives lived upon them. I paid a visit to the local garden center, The proprietor, an old friend, greeted me with a knowing nod. He understood that gardening wasn't just a hobby, it was a dialogue with nature, a conversation often more illuminating than any human exchange. I purchased a selection of new grass seeds, hardy and vibrant, designed to flourish where others might falter. But I also picked up something extra, something that would quietly tip the scales of karmic justice. Returning home, I made my way past Karen's house. Her lawn, once the pride of the street, now bore the unmistakable signs of her own recklessness. The bleach had leached into her soil, leaving behind a tapestry of dying grass and irony. It was a testament to overreach, a canvas painted with the brush of unintended consequences. As night fell, I completed my subtle countermeasure. The new seeds, selected with care, were not just for repair. They were an invitation to nature's whimsy, a gentle, persistent bloom of clover, meant to coexist with grass, yet stand defiantly against uniformity. It would spread like a quiet rebellion, casting its soft green over the scars until they were no more. Weeks turned into months, and the neighborhood watched as my lawn transformed. The clover spread, a sea of green, soft and lush. Visitors would often pause, admiring its unexpected beauty. Meanwhile, Karen's lawn struggled, a battlefield of patchy grass and stubborn weeds. She'd created her own nemesis, a silent testament to her folly. In the end, there was no need for confrontation or words. Nature spoke for me, whispered truths in the rustle of leaves and the gentle nod of clover blossoms. The neighborhood learned the story in whispers and glances, understanding without the need for explanation. And I, content in my quiet corner, found solace in the justice delivered by the earth itself. The morning sun glistened on the dew-kissed lawns, casting a golden hue that danced playfully over the blades of grass. As I stepped outside, the air was tinged with the faint aroma of fresh-cut grass mingled with the acrid scent of bleach. It was a reminder of the silent battle waged in the dark of night, a battle fought with malice, yet revealing unintended truths beneath the surface. Karen's lawn, once a manicured pride of the neighborhood, now bore the scars of her own sabotage. Patches of discolored grass stood testament to her misplaced wrath, a canvas painted by her own hand. Irony had taken root, and it spread with a vigor eclipsing her initial intent to destroy mine. Neighbors began to notice. At first, they whispered behind closed doors, uncertain of the unfolding drama, but the evidence was plain. Her lawn told a story she couldn't hide, and curiosity turned to suspicion. Tensions mounted, weaving an intricate tapestry of neighborhood intrigue. From my porch, I watched as Karen's attempts to revive her lawn grew frantic. She was a figure of frenetic energy, a whirlwind of denial sweeping across the now mottled landscape. Her frustration was palpable, a silent scream echoing across the street. A few neighbors gathered, their eyes flitting from the spectacle to my own lawn. Vibrant and untouched by her corrosive hand, I felt their eyes on me, questioning, searching for answers buried beneath layers of suburban decorum. I remained calm, letting the scene unfold, a quiet observer to the unraveling power dynamics. In the midst of this chaos, one line of dialogue slipped through. A neighbor, bolder than the rest, approached her. "What happened here?" The question hung in the air, heavy with accusation, laced with the knowledge that everyone already suspected the truth. Karen's response was a tight-lipped denial, a facade crumbling under the weight of its own absurdity. Her eyes darted, searching for allies among the gathered crowd, but finding only thinly veiled judgment. The irony was exquisite, a symphony of poetic justice played upon the stage of her own creation. Meanwhile, I reflected on the scene before me. The absurdity of it all was almost theatrical. How swiftly had the mighty fallen, brought low by their own hubris. There was no need for me to intervene. No need to assert dominance or seek revenge. Nature had done that in my stead, with far more grace and finality than I could have hoped to achieve. In this quiet moment, I felt a surge of empathy, not for Karen's predicament, but for her ignorance of its cause. Sometimes, the most profound lessons are learned not through confrontation, but through the silent acknowledgement of one's own missteps. Her lawn, bare and exposed, was a mirror reflecting back the consequences of her choices. As the crowd began to disperse, the whispers continued, carrying tales of the fallen queen of the cul-de-sac. In their wake, I remained on my porch, a guardian of my own small patch of green, serene amid the unfolding drama. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the yard. In those shadows lay the remnants of a conflict, a reminder that some battles are won not by force, but by the quiet persistence of truth. The grass beneath my feet felt cool and forgiving, a testament to resilience and the gentle cycle of life that endures, even in the face of adversity. Dawn broke reluctantly, casting a pale light over the simmering neighborhood. The air was thick with anticipation. I looked out my window at the battlefield of lawns. Karen's grass stood a grim testament to hubris, brown and wilted, as if each blade was trying to curl away from the scene of its own demise. Mine, by contrast, was a vibrant tapestry of greens, saved in the nick of time by nature's own resilience and a well-timed rain. It was as if the earth itself had conspired against her, choosing to heal my lawn while leaving hers to shrivel under the consequences of her malice. I sat at my kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, turning over the plans like a jeweler examining a rare gem. My recourse had been quiet, almost invisible, but undeniably potent. The legal documents lay in a neat stack, a tactical array of papers that spoke not in heated words, but in the cool, dispassionate language of justice. Karen had always believed herself above consequence, a ruler in a small fiefdom, wielding the HOA like a scepter, but she had overstepped. And now the scales of neighborhood justice were poised to teeter against her. I had reached out to the HOA board, not with anger, but with a calm recount of her transgressions, underscored by undeniable evidence. A thought took root, as persistent as the weeds in Karen's lawn. Her downfall would not come from my hand, but from her own. It was as if the universe had decided enough was enough, and I was merely the instrument of its balancing act. The neighborhood was a stage, and we its reluctant players. Children skipped along the sidewalks, dogs barked in fenced yards, and there, beneath the watchful gaze of mourning Karen, emerged from her house. Her expression was a mask of disbelief, eyes scanning the devastation she had wrought upon herself. I felt a twinge of something resembling pity, but it was fleeting. She had sown the wind, and now she would reap the whirlwind. A gentle breeze rustled through my thriving lawn, whispering secrets of serenity and strength. A few days later, the HOA meeting convened. Faces familiar and otherwise filled the room, a tapestry of curiosity and concern woven into their postures. Karen arrived, her demeanor a fragile fortress of arrogance, but even fortresses crumble. I sat quietly, letting the board unfold the story, presenting the evidence with the same calm precision with which a gardener prunes away dead growth. There were murmurs of disapproval, the collective voice of a community waking to the truth. Karen's protest was as inevitable as the turning of the seasons, but her defense was an edifice built on sand, and as the tide of evidence rose, it washed away her bluster, leaving only the stark reality of her actions. The board's decision was swift. Karen's reign was over. Her misuse of power had been her undoing, a tragic hero of her own making. The meeting concluded, and as people filed out, I caught Karen's eye. There was no triumph in my gaze, only the steady reflection of justice served. Outside, the sun shone brighter, its light a promise of new beginnings. As I walked back to my home, past lawns that whispered in the breeze, I knew that true power lay not in domination, but in patience, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the quiet strength of right. In the end, it was not my lawn that was the battlefield, but the heart of the community, and in that quiet victory, I found peace. The morning sun crept over the horizon, spilling golden light across the neighborhood. It was the kind of light that promised a new beginning, washing away the remnants of yesterday's storms. I sat on my porch, cradling a cup of coffee, watching the dew evaporate from the grass like a quiet sigh of relief. My lawn, once a battlefield, now stood in defiant, vibrant green. The chaos Karen had unleashed with her bottle of bleach had been a catalyst for change. The community had watched in horror as patches of earth turned sickly yellow. Chemical warfare waged in the dead of night. But nature, like truth, has a way of persisting. My lawn recovered, nourished by rain and patience, flourishing in spite of or perhaps because of the ordeal. As for Karen, her own plot of land now mirrored the wreckage she had intended for mine. The irony was sharp, like a knife edge gleaming in the sun. I had not reciprocated her actions. The universe had handled that with poetic precision. Her once pristine garden, a shrine to her fierce sense of control, lay in disarray. The bleached scars, visible to all who passed, it was as though the earth itself had taken a stand. I watched as neighbors began to stir, their silhouettes moving behind curtains, preparing to face the new day. There was a sense of camaraderie now, born of shared conflict and collective resolution. The whispers of discontent that had rippled through the community were now conversations, open and earnest, about how we wished to live together. Karen had retreated into the shadows of her home, the queen deposed from her self-made throne. Her attempts to impose her will on the neighborhood had been her undoing. Some called it karma. I thought of it as consequence. The community had grown weary of her reign, her rules, her relentless pursuit of perfection at the cost of peace. She would emerge eventually, I knew. But the dynamics had shifted. Her authority was now a mere echo, a reminder of the fragility of power built on fear and intimidation. It was not that Karen had lost her voice entirely, it was that we had found ours. People smiled more now, stopped to chat across fences, the barriers both physical and emotional dissolving like morning mist. Maybe she would learn, maybe not, but the community had moved on, planting seeds of kindness where there had been division. Gardens bloomed with a riot of colors, as if celebrating their liberation from the confines of rigid expectation. As I sipped my coffee, I considered the nature of victory. It was not about defeating Karen. It was about reclaiming our sense of self, our shared space, our collective spirit. The lawn was merely a symbol, a canvas upon which the story had unfolded. A bird landed nearby, pecking at the ground with determined curiosity. It took flight again, soaring into the clear blue sky, leaving behind a world altered, yet somehow more its own. We all carried on, changed yet unchanged, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply to live well,